Hello and welcome back to another episode. Today I want to share with you what we got up to last night. In fact, what we've been doing once or twice a week for the past several weeks. And that is playing the board game Pandemic. But not just any version of Pandemic, Pandemic Legacy Season 1. Now I'll come back to that in just a moment, because Pandemic itself, the basic game, in fact, is increasingly popular amongst people I know, friends, family, and you may well have heard of it. And what it does is it pits you as players against four pathogens represented by microscopic images of single-cell organisms at the bottom left-hand corner of the board. Each pathogen has a colour, so there's yellow, red, black and blue, and they spread out across a map of the globe with increasing ferocity and frequency, and you have to try and stop the spread of the disease before it just engulfs the planet and then everyone dies. Each turn sees you moving around the board, maybe eradicating infected people who are actually represented on the board by little coloured cubes. They're actually really pleasing little cubes, almost like LEDs lit up on a WHO task force board, or maybe a computer screen at the UN or something, you know. And you can eradicate them. You can gather evidence as you pick up more cards, and each city actually is colour coded. So, for example, in South America, the cities are yellow, because that's where the yellow disease breaks out. And if you get 6 pieces of evidence, 6 of those cards, you're able to cure the disease, which sees you move a medicine bottle over the picture of the pathogen. Then, if you're lucky enough, you get to go around eradicating that disease. If you have the cure, you can move from place to place, get rid of all the cubes on the board of that colour, turn over the medicine bottle, and you have eradicated that disease. If you're really good, you can eradicate all the diseases, but more often than not, actually, the game ramps up the odds against you. In the deck of cards, there's an epidemic card, and you can have maybe 5 of those in the deck, which massively increases the odds of you losing. An epidemic card sees the disease exploding in certain places, and if you get 3 infected cubes on a city spot, then they spread and another cube lands on the cities that are connected to it. So if you're not careful, the disease can spread quickly, get out of control, and if you get too many outbreaks, too many epidemic sort of scenarios, then the game is over. I think you get to have 6 or 7 of those outbreaks before the game just automatically fails on you. And it is brilliant. I've been enjoying this, well, the basic version of the game for a couple of years, in fact. And we also discovered a Cthulhu variant from the makers of Pandemic, where you're trying to shut down cultists from opening up gateways to the great Cthulhu. There are Shoggoth and all sorts of other things that happen in that game, which actually makes it much more difficult, in fact, than Pandemic. But I suppose that's the goal, isn't it? Cthulhu is, you know, it's cosmic madness. It's going to overwhelm you. So there's that version of the game, but then there's also Pandemic Legacy Season 1, which is not cheap. So me, my lovely wife and a friend, we all chipped in to get this board game. And it's very interesting. You see, it plays like Pandemic, but as the game proceeds, and incidentally I won't spoil any specifics here if you're interested in playing this, as the game proceeds, the game changes, literally. At the beginning and end of every month, there are 12 monthly scenarios, so 12 games that you can play. You are given a dossier and special stickers, perhaps, that modify the rules. You actually stick them onto the board or onto cards or into the rule book. You get new equipment, maybe new disease types or new variants of a disease, this kind of thing, that unfold as this season progresses. It's been a deeply satisfying extension of the Pandemic, the Pandemic formula, I suppose, if you forgive the pun. And we very much enjoyed, actually, the use of characters in this game. In this game, or in this variant of Pandemic, you get characters much as you do in the basic game, and each character tends to have a specialism. So maybe you're an IT specialist who is able to transfer information remotely to people to help them get those 6 cards to cure a disease. Maybe you're great at going in and just eradicating everything in one place. And so that you're the tank, you're going around destroying the disease. But in the Pandemic Legacy variant, these characters take on prolonged lives of their own. The cards are much bigger. They have names, they have relationships with other characters. So if you're a rival with another character, and incidentally at the beginning of each game you can choose which characters you're going to play as. So you can maybe say, well, actually today let's have this person who's a rival with that person playing in this scenario. And if you are a rival, for example, when you discard a card, they can pick it up from your rival can pick it up from the discard pile, this kind of thing. But also, as the scenarios unfold, if your character, for example, is in a city when the virus explodes in that city, they gain a scar, which is, again, it's a stick-on item onto the character card that changes how the character behaves. So maybe they'll become paranoid and they won't want to share information with anyone who they don't have a relationship with, that kind of thing. Maybe they will not go into certain places where the infection is heavy, and you start to get a television-like story unfolding. It's kind of like a combination between 24 and a big disaster movie or something like that, and you're playing it each of these month scenarios one after the other. Now sometimes you do lose the monthly scenario and you're able to play it one more time. You don't have to change any of the changes that you've made to the board. For example, each time a city outbreaks with the disease, it gains another panic level, which you stick to the board. So once it gets to level 4, I think, the city is collapsing. And so in the next monthly scenario, that city has certain problems, which means that you can't do certain things in that place. You can't build a hospital, for example. Well, that's in the basic game. But also in Pandemic Legacy, there are other buildings that you can build. Maybe buildings with military applications. It means that the board takes on a character of its own, and in fact, when particular disease variants turn up, whole swathes of the world can change, and you start to see them in different ways. So one thing that you can do, and it's not really a spoiler in terms of story, but an aspect of the game that recently turned up for us, was you can put down permanent roadblocks. You can stick a sticker that blocks, say, the link between Jakarta and its neighbouring city, Ho Chi Minh or something like that. The board itself evolves, and you start to understand this landscape actually as it's unfolding before you, and also how your characters are going to respond to that landscape. So last night I lost a colonel, a really useful character who was great at quarantining cities. He could go in and eradicate certain types of infected people. Again, no specifics, no spoilers. But last night he was lost. Sadly, he died a hero's death. He gained he already had 2 scars, and he gained a 3rd scar. Now the thing is, though, what we didn't notice is that yesterday we also, for the first time, got some new equipment. And this equipment could have helped him escape that city, but because we were playing this month for the first time, we hadn't properly read the equipment information. Well, I certainly hadn't, actually, sadly, and so we lost him. And actually, the game has that built in. It says if you make a mistake, because sometimes it asks you to destroy cards as well, actually, which we don't do. We can't quite bring ourselves to destroy the cards. We just sort of put them to one side. You're expected just to continue with those mistakes. So in this instance, the colonel, even though he had access to this piece of equipment that could have saved him, again, no specifics, we decided that he was just too panicked. He wasn't able to open it or get into it, or to deploy it in a way that would have helped him get out of that city. It is fantastic, and I really hope, because we're currently at month June. So we're sort of halfway point in the scenario, and last night we did lose, so we're going to have to play June again next time we meet on Monday, in fact. next Monday. I'm hoping that not only will the game amp up the tension and get more and more intense, and have maybe these evolving plot points and disease aspects and equipment types and building types and all this stuff have satisfying variants and scenario developments, this kind of thing, but I'm also wondering if this board itself will migrate into Season 2. Now, if it doesn't migrate into Season 2, that's okay, I can live with it, because presumably the makers of the board game have a sense of how they want each season to progress. But it would be amazing if this game, a bit like D&D with subsequent campaigns, or, well, skirmishes within campaigns, if this board game can evolve and we can take these characters with us into the next variant of Pandemic Legacy. I don't know if this has been useful as a video, in so much as I haven't wanted to be too specific. I don't want to spoil, as I say, anything about what happens and how it happens. But the way that the game modifies itself, the way that you are drawn into new rules, new details of the game, and new character developments and so on and so forth, is really very satisfying indeed. So if you are curious about this in terms of Pandemic in general, give it a go. But if you like Pandemic and you're looking at Pandemic Legacy going, oh, well, it's a bit expensive and you're only really going to play it once and then it's done, trust me, it's worth it. If you're really enjoying Pandemic Legacy takes it to that next level. Not that I particularly like that phrase, but it does. It elevates it to a fuller vision of what Pandemic is, in terms of that screen, that crisis computer monitoring center that you're all gathered around going, oh, look at this city and deploy this, and you're trying to manage crises, multiple crises. It takes that and it does what you want it to do. It puts you in the shoes of people who are managing an unfolding series of epidemics that just won't stop developing and changing and evolving and mutating, and over the course of a year you go through hell. It's brilliant, and I simply had to sort of register my excitement at playing this game, and I'm really looking forward to, as I say, seeing where it goes and having that sense of story. I mean, again, this is something that really builds on Pandemic as well, is the story elements. Pandemic, vanilla Pandemic as it were, basic Pandemic, is a scenario, but this is a story, which is, I suppose you could say, is a series of unfolding scenes or scenarios. So it's well worth a try. Hopefully this does something to help you if you're on the fence. As ever, guys, until next time, do take care. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.